So this is the still continuing the Financial Times. This is part 3 of the Diagnosing, Fleet Street, on Tuesday, the 15th of September 2020. Now the point about this one is the ombudsman. They have these financials and they're supposedly reporting about ombudsman service puts up defense of disputes handling. Now this is a piece the Financial Times is promoting the bankers and others who are complaining or being complained against by the victims of the misconduct to this financial ombudsman service. And the main allegation is taken from the all-party parliamentary group on alternative lending. That all-party parliamentary group on alternative lending. This must not mislead viewers, anyone watching this, into thinking that it is to do with the parliament. It is not. All-party parliamentary group is a kind of misleading formulation of a group of persons, members of parliament, and probably others, that operate as a lobby on an issue, and they call it all-party parliamentary group. So it's not the same thing as parliamentary decisions, although decisions by parliament is also subject to serious skepticism and objections on the basis of evidence. But here, the all-party parliamentary group on alternative lending earlier this year highlighted significant unease about the financial ombudsman service among non-bank lenders. Peter Reynolds, Director of Investor Relations at Non-Standard Finance, told the all-party parliamentary group that the industry was under siege from an ombudsman that is applying its own interpretation of FCA rules. Now, FCA is the so-called Financial Conduct Authority, which is itself a completely misleading kind of name of that organization. It's a bogus organization. It's one of the kind of organizations that exist to hide the failures and the corruption and the criminality, individual criminality, institutional criminality of the sector. And that one, FCA, is such a criminal outfit. It is supposedly the regulatory body for the financial, the banks and so forth. And yet its website, it is completely full of barriers. And I shall come to similar barriers being displayed by other ombudsman and regulatory so-called bodies. Anyone who wants to look at the Ofcom of website, there is nothing there. Of course, there is a lot of text, but these are all kind of barriers. These are all diversions, delays, and denials. So going to the point of the legality, there is this thing called the thing called Bar Standards Board. Bar Standards Board is a propaganda outfit for the benefit of the 4 Inns of Court: Inner Temple, Middle Temple, Lincoln's Inn, and Gray's Inn. So Bar Standards Board has got a whole wall after wall after wall of obstructions, as has the Solicitors Regulation Authority, the equivalent for the licensed law trading solicitors. And so the same thing with the BMA, the same thing with all these organizations, the barriers and obstructors, I have had dealings with over decades. And I'm basing what I'm saying on the updated knowledge on my part about what they're doing. Now, these things have been called various different things before. The names have changed, but the behavior has not changed. And so, therefore, we're talking in the context of the parliamentary kind of outrage staged by small number of MPs and ex prime ministers and so on at Boris Johnson's thuggish kind of attempt to break the law and break the principle of the rule of law, so-called due process, etc. So if the constitution is being broken and the law is being broken by parliament or by the gang that has hijacked control of parliament due to the collusion and complicity on the part of Jeremy Corbyn on the 12th of December 2019, then where do people go? And as I was saying in the previous edition, people can go to the ombudsman, but the ombudsman are not there to provide relief, because the ombudsman is supposed to be the place where aggrieved people who have got complaints about members of a profession, so-called, have to go to before they can go to court credibly, because the court has one of its own many obstructions, which include the question or the issue: have you tried getting the relief or the answers or satisfaction from the body itself, like the Financial Conduct Authority? Financial Conduct Authority for a long time has been misconducting, and it is no way is it to be trusted to deal with the complaints against the banks. It's part of the banks, let's say, and it is corrupt to the core, as is the legal ombudsman. If you complain against a licensed law trader to the Bar Standards Board or to the Solicitors Regulation Authority, the SRA, they will ask you, have you gone to the legal ombudsman? Then that's purgatory. That is like purgatory. You go there to the legal ombudsman and you are subjected to the most frustrating series of obstructions. Now, there is no way, that does not exist a human being who can withstand the obstructions in the purgatory. Well, I am the only person who has been putting up with all of these, for a very long time. So I have become the alternative to all of those things. Not because I wanted to, but every time I have approached one of these on evidence, I have found the obstruction complete. And there is no justification on the part of anyone saying that these things work for the party that has got a complaint against a practicing licensed solicitor or licensed so-called barrister or a licensed dentist or a licensed GP or any of those people. So anyone who says that there is relief, they must produce the evidence. And the evidence does not exist, because out of thousands of such licensed practitioners in these various fields, there are only a handful of people who get anywhere near the end of the kind of process, which takes years. I'm saying this as part of the original world exclusive kind of diagnosis of Fleet Street. And by Fleet Street here, I mean the omissions and the commissions of Fleet Street. And here I'm talking about an item printed in today's Financial Times. Today's Financial Times cover price in London, UK is £4. Any kind of exchange rate persons comparing this will understand just how expensive this is in terms of the daily cost of living, if you like. And so that is a restriction itself. And they have a paywall. The Financial Times doesn't let you access these contents through the internet. nor does the Daily Borisgraph, nor does the Times. And so therefore these are kind of platforms that are supposed to be in a free, democratic, accountable, fair, open society. Forget the thought. Forget the thought. And the rate at which the Guardian is pestering people for money, it is only a matter of time before the Guardian actually follows suit and erects paywalls. And what we are doing is looking here at the ombudsman. So this is it is more extensive than a seminar. It's more extensive than a kind of lecture. It's like a semester. Take this, it is like a semester. What I'm sharing here contains more original information and evidence than a semester will give you. You can read a lot of books and textbooks and all the rest of it, but you won't find what I'm saying here. And what is happening on the ombudsman game is that is an elaborate mesh of obstructions against basic human decency and accountability. And there is no question that there is any accountability for the people with the most power, which is the police. There is nothing exists in the UK that has anything remotely like even a formal complaint against the police. If you make any complaint against the police, you will be marked. That is the thing, because the police supposedly in London, for example, are supposedly politically led by the mayor of London, which is called the Metropolitan Police Authority. And the mayor, Sadiq Khan, is nowhere there. I mean, he's, in terms of the political life of demanding democratic service and accountability, Sadiq Khan, who has been mayor since 2016, got in after a vicious anti-Muslim campaign against him by Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Jack Goldsmith, his opponent on the ballot paper, and other racists and anti-Muslim people. So he benefited, in a way, partly from the sympathy vote. But in post, Sadiq Khan has been totally unable to deliver anything. No narrative, no agenda, nothing. And this is most acutely evident in the fact that policing is totally without any accountability. Now, I'm not naming any police officer here for the simple reason that I have not lodged a complaint. I don't think I have lodged any complaint against any police with any of the organizations that exist in the name of complaining about the police. And this was the same role played by Ken Livingstone, who was mayor until the May election 2008. And Livingstone supported police status quo, which was under severe criticism otherwise in the public. Severe in the sense that there was a kind of season of high level, high octane, highly frequent criticism because of the Stockwell tube station death by police shooting of a Brazilian man who was shot because he was thought as a Pakistani terrorist. Now, Ken Livingstone supported the police and supported the police commissioner and supported the police personnel. And he did not support the demand for police accountability. It's the same Ken Livingstone who was at the Greater London Council, GLC, which had Paul Boateng chairing the police committee of the Greater London Council. So even decades earlier, the police were under criticism for various things, but they are not held to account in a democratic way, in a fair way, in a transparent way. Now, who is going to answer this question? There is no MP, there is no member of parliament, there is no member of the House of Peers, there is no minister, there is no former prime minister, there is no current prime minister who will address this. And I'm saying that this important issue needs to be updated with an accountability process being established that is actually real, so that people have reason to have confidence in the police for the benefit of society as a whole and the law and order in terms of the role of the police. So this is a deficit that has been there for always, and there has been no address, there is no acknowledgement of this by Corbyn or even Tony Benn. If Tony Benn has been on the record as being concerned about what I'm being concerned about, then I would like to see the record or hear the record or read about the record. So what I'm saying is that there is no kind of justice, there is no remedies through the ombudsman system, and for most of the powerful organizations, there is not even a token ombudsman in operation. So what kind of democracy is it? What kind of rights do the people have in this, within quote, society? Because Margaret Thatcher did not accept that there existed a thing called society. And most of the occupants now are supporters and followers and disciples of what they think is the legacy of Margaret Thatcher. So if there is no society, then there can be held to account on nothing that happens against society, which is what is happening now. All the policies are against the support that society needs, including health, actual provision of health, including service, including the income, including the housing, and all the issues that we have been talking about and people experience every day. So if you go to the ombudsman, for example, the local ombudsman and the legal service ombudsman, so-called legal ombudsman, you will waste your that part of your life that will be taken up by the perpetual demands by them under all kinds of dishonest excuses for you to spend days answering their stupid, irrelevant, unwarranted, illegal, criminally conceived, dishonest questions. And the same thing with the information commissioner. The actual commissioner is a North American person, and she has got absolutely no commitment to delivering the service that the information commissioner post or bureaucracy exists for. So, for example, I can give examples of applications for information from the Newham Council. And the information commissioner would say that we shall be dealing with your complaint after a month, after you wait for a month since you last wrote to them or since you asked them for information. So what happens that you are automatically delayed by a month. They don't ask you to tell them what has happened, and you have already waited for not 1 month, but for many months, for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And still Newham Council is not giving you the information. And the information commissioner, bureaucrat, Damian Hamil is the name. So Hamil, if he is accessing this, Damian Hamil is the racistly motivated liar who said that too many questions to him was wasting his time and not producing anything. That's what the information commissioner has said. Daniel Hamil, I have named the one there. So the ombudsman is a joke. The ombudsman system is a joke. Anyone at law school being told about the ombudsman must take that person, whoever is either lecturing them or whoever is telling them online, grab hold of them and demand material production of the evidence of the life and existence of this ombudsman as a service. There is no service. It's an obstruction. So there is in the English or British bureaucracies these meshes and meshes and meshes of obstructions, filters and filters and filters and barriers of obstructions called ombudsman. And for example, the Charity Commission. The Charity Commission is supposed to be regulating charities, and it has been watered down and watered down and watered down to a point where there is nothing, no regulation of misconduct in charities. Most charities are controlled, most charities, that is where it involves money or making money. A lot of people set up charities as a way of making money, pocketing money through donations and other things, and exploiting people's general kind of generosity. But most misconducting members and trustees of corrupt charities get away because there is no actual accountability process in the Charity Commission. The questions that arise about the Charity Commission, about the Information Commissioner, the Legal Ombudsman, the Financial Conduct Authority are questions that arise about the main democratically elected kind of outfits about which most of the complaints are, like the local councils, like the Greater London Authority. But the Greater London Authority being a regional authority, apart from transport and apart from police, it is not directly kind of engaged with the public. So it has got an intermediary locus. But the local councils are in direct engagement against the people. And so therefore, what we have here in this country is a kind of constitutional, what is it? Is it called the typical British high standards? Yes, that is the thing that Ed Miliband actually hurled in the direction of Boris Johnson on Monday. He said that Britain had a reputation, which is a good reputation, etc., etc. Now there, Ed Miliband got it wrong. Britain has not got the reputation that he thinks, or as Hilary Benn thought Britain enjoyed. But the point is subtle, because the reputation, although it is damaged and tarnished, it is worth defending, it's worth reviving, it's worth kind of reactivating, let's say, and re-establishing. That's the point that I think, or that's the description of the updating of the speech that Ed Miliband gave yesterday. I'll do the updating in that way, in those words. So the reputation, or the claim, the slogan exists that Britain is a democratic country, is a democracy, and there are these ombudsmen. Because first of all, you've got the councils, then you've got the parliament, and you've got the kind of agencies or institutions like the NHS and so forth. But then if you are unhappy with those, unhappy with the dentist, unhappy with the GP, I'm talking about pre-lockdown kind of periods. Since the lockdown, many of these interactions have obviously been replaced by no interaction at all. And so therefore, the general kind of references I'm making are still on the assumption of what used to be the kind of level of interactions before the lockdown. But the lockdown has not replaced everything. For example, the claims against the local councils are as valid now during the lockdown, or since the lockdown was introduced, as they were before the lockdown. And the same thing applies to the likes of Stephen Timms, for example. I'll come to discussing that as well. Now, Stephen Timms is a former minister. He was a minister in the DWP, and he was a minister during the last kind of time, as I think probably he was a minister in the first decade of this century, let's say 2004 or 5, that kind of time. And Stephen Timms parades himself as a kind of man of faith, man of kind of God, man of belief, he has got some kind of faith affiliation. But when you test him on the basis of his reliability as a local MP concerned about various issues of urgent importance to individual constituents and groups of individuals, the evidence is that Stephen Timms is as dishonest, as corrupt, as opportunist as any of the others. For example, as I said, a woman who is probably now deceased had a relation. She's an Indian woman, Sikh woman, Sikh religious woman, from the Sikh religious community. She had a nephew because the nephew's parents could not look after him, or for some reason, she kind of took over responsibility for him. The nephew was declared non-existent by the Home Office. His existence was completely declared not there by the Home Office for years. And so the woman, being a constituent in the constituency of East Ham, where Stephen Timms is MP and was MP at the time, she contacted the MP on advice, whoever advised her. And the MP's office wrote the routine plastic letters to her, saying this, that, and the other, but never getting to the point, getting to the actual details of how the Home Office did that and how the Home Office has got it wrong. So it went on for years. In 2010, I was approached by accident by my campaign colleague and friend, ally, K. Jordan, who knew this woman and who actually trusted K. Jordan. So K. Jordan said, because the woman was getting very desperate about the uncertainty, the limbo of her nephew, she said to this person, why don't you give Mr. Haque, that is me, the information and see what will happen. It was in a sitting in a cafe in the Greater X Street, not far from Brick Lane. And we were having tea and a meal, whatever it was. We were in a kind of cafe that we used to frequent quite often. And so this woman gave me the information. I asked her the name, details, and sent me a copy of the letter or the letters that I got exchanged between her and Stephen Timms. And she gave me the information. So I put the question, I'll come to that, to Stephen Timms' office. The question that they never kind of realized existed. Because in the communications, the attached communications from between the person and the MP and the Home Office about the nephew, remember this child or this young person was declared non-existent. That was the issue. He did exist, but he was not officially recognized as living or as existing. So his aunt wanted him to be recognized as existing so that he could go to school, go to college, whatever, and he could act as a living human being. So from the unliving, I brought him to the living. And I'll tell you how I brought him to the living. I asked a question and I put it to the MP, the Stephen Timms' office. I said, on such and such a date, previously in the correspondence, they had referred to this boy as part of the communication with his parent or his family, whatever. Remember, I'm talking from memory. The substance is correct, but the dates I cannot give because it was 10 years ago. So I then said, then if they recognize this boy's relationship with his parents or his other members of his family, then it follows that the boy did exist at that date. So if he existed on that date, how come that he doesn't exist anymore? What happened? So I put that question to Stephen Timms' office. And within 24 hours, the aunt got a reply, whoever sent the reply, confirming that the boy existed and he was alive. He was alive, of course, because he was living with her, but they didn't have official acknowledgement of his being lively and alive. So K. Jordan, my friend and colleague, said to me that Mr. Haque has cracked it within 72 hours, which I did. Now that is the reason I'm actually referring to that is the example of the things I have been doing. So if I could do that, then it shows Stephen Timms up as an idiot, as it does expose his entire staff, parliamentary staff or support staff, as morons. That's the point I'm making. And I've made the point in correspondence to Stephen Timms that he's a moron, based on evidence, not because I have no better word for him, but that is the behavior of a moron. They had been dealing with supposedly this correspondence and had completely misunderstood or missed the critical fact that the boy had already been in existence and he had been recognized as being alive and in existence. At that point, previously, the Home Office had queried or denied his right to be here. That is the thing. But later, they denied his being alive. So I had to bring him to life on the basis of records. So if Stephen Timms is that stupid, what was he doing being kind of referred to as an Oxbridge kind of educated, whatever. What do they do at Oxbridge? That's the question. And Stephen Timms now is the successor in chronological terms. As I said earlier about Luther Roman's successor, John Biggs, being a successor in chronological terms. So Stephen Timms is now the chronological successor of Frank Field, who chronologically succeeded Anne Bagg as the chair of the DWP Select Committee of MPs. Now, I can say that the Select Committee in all these years has not done anything to produce any traction in the findings about the behavior of the DWP. Just as Keith Sleaze Vaz, as the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, failed to produce any report of any traction about the Home Office. And he did not produce anything that focused on the Home Office's absolutely dedicated racism and institutional racism, the hostile environment directive by Theresa May, anything like that. So, ombudsmen and these MPs' committees are similar. They rubber stamp. And these MPs and the ombudsman and the registered charities, as I have said about the shelter, about RSPCA, about Save the Children, about the Child Poverty Action Group, these are some of the biggest kind of charities in the sense of the number of people who donate money to them, the amount of money they receive, and the range and extent of their kind of numerical kind of scale and the effect they have on the groups they are supposed to defend and protect. So if they are doing their job, how is it? There's so many people, elderly people in care homes and other places are being destroyed, literally destroyed. How is it that millions of animals are being destroyed every year in this country? Insects, animals. How is it that so many children are being abused? What was Save the Children doing in Rochdale? what was it doing in other places where the organized gangs of rapists were raping the white girls for so long? What was the Save the Children saving there? So it's not my invention. It is absolutely straight as that. So therefore, the ombudsman in those areas and the charities are not working. And no complaint was made to the ombudsman about Rochdale or other council, Barnley, or any of the places where these girls were being raped systematically and destroyed. So what's the point of this local government ombudsman? The point is that there is a smokescreen created to deflect attention of the victims and attention of the other people affected from the failings and the negligence and the criminality. So we need in this country a replacement, complete abolition of the ombudsman and these charities. And there has to be forums based on the area of kind of duty that society owes to people being violated and people in need. And I think that the recent dishonestly conceived agenda or decision by the conservatives to do away with local councils structures and replace the councils with mostly elected or executive mayors shows that councils have completely outlived their purpose, because they can be now disposed of without any fear of retaliation by the communities. And in Tower Hamlets and in Newham, the communities are completely hoodwinked into thinking that the council doesn't even exist. Most people don't recognize the local councils as being of relevance to them at all. And so, therefore, going back to the legal ombudsman, say you went to a solicitor or a barrister, licensed barrister or solicitor, and their criminal behavior and dishonesty cost you £1,000, your home, your entire life savings, and everything else. You are in shock. You are traumatized. What do? You can't go to court because you haven't got the money, and there is no confidence on your part in another solicitor or licensed law trader. And if you want to complain, they tell you that you can get a kind of remedy from the legal ombudsman. If you are foolish enough to engage in a complaint against a licensed law trader with the legal ombudsman, then you are completely in kind of need of rehabilitation and serious psychological kind of examination, because you must not do that. Being destroyed and being robbed of your belongings by the corrupt and criminally active licensed law trading solicitor, you do not deserve to lose anymore. And you will lose, definitely lose, if you go to the legal ombudsman. That is how bad they are. Anyone who thinks that the officialdom are good should think of Dominic Cummings. Is he good? He's celebrating being a weirdo and a lawbreaker. So that's a personification of bad in power. It's not a myth. Dominic Cummings is not a myth. Anyone who thinks that whoever is prime minister is an honorable person, look at Boris Johnson and see if he's honorable. He cannot reach from one end of the word spelling to the rest. He will lie his way from H to R, H to B, H to E, whatever the spelling entails, he will make false statements, misbehave, and be in denial. He signed that treaty. He signed that agreement. He signed that document, whatever he did. And he now says that he He never thought it was good enough. He never thought it was any good. And he was saying to the whole of the Conservative Party, to the whole of the country, that that was the best and most important thing they had, and they had to accept it. And they did. The gullibles, the brainwashable did that and got him into the post. So if the Prime Minister cannot be trusted, is it too much to say that a local council employee who has a license to tell lies cannot be trusted? That's what is happening in Newham. That's what has been happening in Tower Hamlets. That's what is happening in Lambeth, in Sadak, and in Hackney, and in other councils. And in Croydon, for example, they have been kind of openly lying to the community that an elected mayor would solve all their crimes. It would only intensify their criminal deceptions and ability to mislead the people and show two fingers, while the last kind of person, this person who kind of Negrini, left a burden of debt, nearly £2 billion of debt she caused the Croydon Council crooks to incur at the expense of the local electors in Croydon. So where do people go when a council like that behaves corruptly year after year after year, and has a gang of councillors who are crooks, who are rewarding one another in cahoots with the criminals in the director's posts, with rewards, with contracts, etc., worth hundreds of millions of pounds altogether? Where do the electors go? They can't go to the ombudsman because ombudsman doesn't have any powers or the willingness to deal with these mass thefts and robberies of the communities. So when people go to the bank and the bank doesn't give them an account, and the bank wants them to produce evidence of ID, of reliability, whatever it is, there is no law, there is no legal list of identities that you have to produce. So it's left at the whim and the caprice of the bank personnel to decide whether you are fit to have an account or not. That is contrary to all the declarations and all the treaties about human rights and entitlements that UK remains a signatory to. So I would say to Keir Starmer, taking the lesson from Ed Miliband yesterday, that he can raise the level of pressure by raising the questions based on what are the treaties the UK is a signatory to currently, and which treaties, which declarations, which charters, which conventions are being implemented by the local authorities, by the court system, by the banks, by the police, and by the government. It's not rocket science. It is there, and I have just set it out. So if there is the kind of evidence that the government is complying with that, then that's the end of it. But of course, there is evidence that the government is not complying with it. Not only is it not complying with it, it is being abused. The government, that is, or the power of government, is being abused to break existing laws and existing charters and agreements. And they're conflating too many things together. The Treaty of Rome of 1950 is nothing to do with the European Union. And the Treaty of Rome is the one that actually has given rise to this convention, human rights conventions. So they're trying to destroy the human rights obligations by saying that it is a result of the UK being a member of the EU. But the UK left the EU already. So this kind of lying, ruthless, brazen, shameless, negligent, uncaring, callous lying is not being kind of pointed out by Keir Starmer and his cabal. And the same thing applies not only about the human rights, but also in the housing. When Thangam Debonair is not doing her job of holding this Robert Jenrick to account or the government to account. And when the ban on eviction proceedings is lifted next week, that's it. There will be dozens and then hundreds and then thousands and thousands of people being thrown into the street and made homeless and their lives destroyed. There is no outcry on the labor benches, nowhere whatsoever. So that kind of desolate prospect, this country's people face, so many people, thousands of people face that kind of desolation. They go to the bank and they don't get an account on financial service. In the case of Newham, I know that the Newham Council doesn't comply with the freedom of information requests. And as I have said before, this is a habit that has been going on for years. Newham Council just doesn't respect the Freedom of Information Act. So it's not a conservative council, it's a labor council, supposedly to kind of be relied on, to respect the rule of law and whatever, but it doesn't. Same thing with Tower Hamlets Council, and same thing with most local councils. So most of the laws that are in the statute book are being defied by local councils as well. So when Boris Johnson breaks the law, it is not historic at all, and it is not surprising because most of the culture of governance, local government, central government in this country is based on the assumption that was summarized by Donald Trump 20 or so years before he kind of took over the White House, that the Republican Party had the stupidest people in it, and he could do anything to them, which is what he is doing. And that is the assumption that applies to most people in boroughs like Newham, in Tower Hamlets, and in the rest of inner London and in the rest of England, that the people are assumed to be the stupidest of the lot, and they can be manipulated, fooled, misled, insulted, denied, disenfranchised, displaced, dislocated, degenerated, whatever, and there won't be any repercussions, there won't be any accountability, there won't be any consequences for the wrongdoers as councillors, as council employees, or as executive mayors like Roxana Fiaz or John Biggs or Lutfur Rahman or whoever. And there will be nothing to actually hold their so-called bogus cabinet members to account over. We shall be continuing.